one thing Canadians can all agree on, that the worst place to be in Canada at any given moment is the self-checkout line of a Loblaws, right? Like, it's pretty bad. And when I was there last week, there was a man who was so frustrated with the self-checkout machine. He threw all of his groceries down, stomped his foot, looked up at the sky, and just screamed, F Galen Weston. And I think that's progress, because I think if that would have happened a few weeks ago, he probably would have said something like F Trudeau. And so I want to know, as our future prime minister, like, what would you do to make sure people scream your name at a self-checkout?
Well, I hope that it would be, yay, Karina Gould, because we've brought down the GST and we've made groceries more affordable.
Hello and welcome back to Overstimulated with me, Hilary Henderson. Guys, this can be such a special episode. You know, we talk about politics and we get into world issues on this show, but as you know, it's usually the blind leading the blind. But today we have someone that is a professional at this. She is responsible for making childcare in Canada the price of a latte. Today we have Karina Gould with us on the podcast. Karina, hi, welcome.
Hi, thanks, Hilary.
Thanks so much for coming all the way to our studio in downtown Toronto and joining us today.
Yeah, I'm delighted to be here. This is great.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you. So for those of you who may not know, Karina is running to be the Liberal Party of Canada and our next Prime Minister. If she is successful with this, she will be the youngest person ever to hold this position, and she will be the second woman in Canadian history to be Prime Minister. Wow. Okay. If you didn't fall in love with her with just that sentence, at just 28 years old, she was elected as the MP of Burlington, Ontario. I'm 28 right now, and I can't imagine that level of stress you must have been under. And not only that, you were also the Minister for Democratic Institutions, the Minister for International Development, the Minister for Families, Children and Social Development, and the Leader of Government in House of Commons. You're also the eldest daughter. Your astrological sign is a Cancer. And you're the only MP that I've seen that I think can pull off a nose ring.
Oh, thank you.
How do you feel about being a nose ring girly in a professional space?
Well, you know, it's part of who I am. It's funny, when I was running in 2015, I remember knocking on a few doors and people were like, you're great. I absolutely love you, but you should ditch the nose ring.
Really?
And I was like, oh, actually, that's part of who I am. So
I like that. You're not pandering and getting rid of.
Well, I was like, I don't know, if you're not going to vote for me because I have a nose ring, like there might be bigger issues.
Yes, right. We're filming this on Friday, January 31st, and we're expecting some announcements from the south of the border tomorrow. By the time this comes out, that'll all be out there for the public to consume. And look, you and I are both Canadian young women, okay? Yeah. I'm sure we're no stranger to having men be absolutely obsessed with us. I've seen your comment section, and there are some conservative men out there that are deeply, deeply invested in every move you make.
So true.
And I feel like, you know, with Donald Trump, it started with some light stalking, let's say, talking about us a lot in the media. And now this is getting to like a full-fledged problem where it's announced that possibly tomorrow we'll be hearing about 25% tariffs on Canadian goods and services. Like, what would you say to someone who's like listening to all of this and is like maybe feeling afraid and powerless?
Yeah. Well, look, first of all, I understand. I mean, I think it's really reasonable to have those feelings right now because there's a lot of uncertainty, obviously, with what President Trump is threatening. But what I would also say is that, you know, the government of Canada is on top of this. They have brought together a team across the country, premiers from every political stripe, business leaders, labor leaders, folks who are really focused on this, and they do have a plan to respond, and that they're going to be there to make sure that we have a strong response. And ultimately, you know, what I feel about this is that as Canadians, not only are we a really strong people, not only are we a really resilient people, but we are very smart. Mm-hmm. And so we will come out of this victorious. I know that we will. We did last time where we had a trade dispute with the United States, whether it was the steel and aluminum tariffs that we got removed.
And that was with the previous Trump administration.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or in renegotiating NAFTA. So we will come out on top, but we're going to be there for Canadians to get through this. And, you know, I just think that we can have confidence in our ability to respond effectively and to come out victorious.
Yeah. Well, what would you say to someone who's feeling like individually very powerless? Like, are there things you think individuals could be doing at this time? Yeah.
Buy Canadian, right? Like, I've been talking to people and I love it. They're like, when they go to the grocery store and they like look at ketchup and they're like, okay, this one is made with Canadian tomatoes in Canada and I'm buying that ketchup.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, I was talking to someone in Quinte West earlier this week who was saying that she's put together a whole spreadsheet of what is made in Canada. And so she's buying Quaker Quaker oats from Saskatchewan because the
Great.
other Quaker oats are made in the United States.
Mm,
And so, like, there are absolutely things that you can do to support Canadian businesses and, buy local and, just to do those things. And I think, one of the things that I'm a really optimistic person and I see opportunity where other people see challenges. And I think that, what the United States and President Trump in particular is threatening right now is actually an opportunity for us as Canadians to come together to
mm,
think about how we do more east-west trade,
right.
maybe less north-south. We don't necessarily want to stop doing that, but if we're forced to because of American efforts, then let's find a way for us to support each other and to work together and to maybe bring down some of those barriers that we've had in
Right.
interprovincial trade
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's been so much easier to trade with the Americans. But
Mhm.
that might not be the case, at least for the next little while.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is certainly a challenge, but there's also, as you mentioned, like
Yeah, there's
opportunities with that as
opportunities.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of men, you
Yeah.
have four younger brothers.
Three.
Three younger
Yeah.
brothers. I'm so
Sometimes
sorry.
it feels like four because they've got a lot of
They're
personalities,
all
but they're
running
just three.
around.
Yeah.
What is like, did that prepare you for life in politics at all? Like, did you
Yeah.
just get used to like chaos and bad apologies or like,
A lot of chaos.
yeah.
I love my brothers. They are the most amazing human beings in the world. But growing up with three younger brothers, like, prepares you for pretty much everything. Like, I kind of referred to them growing up as it was like the Tasmanian devil, like just arms and legs and destruction. So I can be, an agent of calm when there is chaos all around.
Was that usually your role in your family growing up? You were like, did you have a spreadsheet with chores? Like, were you organizing?
Well, my
Like,
mom did for sure,
yeah.
and we all participated. But no, I mean it was definitely like I had to look after my brothers a
Mm-hmm,
lot,
mm-hmm.
and they didn't always listen. So I learned a lot of skills to manage, three kind of hockey playing brothers, and I have to say, like, it's much easier to deal with them than it is to deal with some of the opposition
I was
members
gonna ask
in the
that. Like,
House of
what is
Commons.
worse? Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
my brothers are amazing. But and they're like reasonable, thoughtful people too. And not that all opposition members aren't, but some of the conservative members have kind of left reason and thoughtfulness behind right now. Yeah.
So they would. That's like the equivalent of like in your home, like leaving a smelly hockey bag like out for everybody to trip on. Like that would
Yeah,
not be.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Not
yeah,
cool. Not
yeah.
cool. Yeah.
I've got a younger brother as well, and I
Yeah.
feel like all older sisters understand that you're constantly just like concerned. And like my younger brother, he has a PhD. He's very successful by all means, but wherever he goes, he's tripping over things. He's eating his food too fast. I'm like, you're gonna choke. Like, I'm so worried about him all the time. Like, do you have that same kind of worry for like the people around you and
Um,
other Canadians?
Yeah, I mean, I do have that
Yeah.
worry for people around me. My brothers are pretty, like, they've got good heads on their shoulders and they're doing great things, and I'm really really proud of them. But I think, like, being an older sister, I saw a meme that said, like, the most effective man is the eldest daughter, right?
Yes. Period.
And,
Yeah.
and so it's
Yep.
like, how to stand up for yourself, how to get things done, and you just, like, you've had to make your own way in the world, and that's something that I've done. So
Yeah. Yeah. The eldest daughters are the toughest man I've
yeah,
ever seen.
exactly.
Scary, scary,
Yeah,
scary, scary. As we were talking about, this is a hard time for
yeah.
Canadians. I think there's a lot of different things that people really can't seem to agree on right now. But I think one thing Canadians can all agree on, that the worst place to be in Canada at any given moment is the self-checkout line of a Loblaws, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty bad. I was
Yeah.
there last week and it was like Monday, 5:30 p.m. Everybody's trying to get groceries after work and get home. And of course, there's like, one attendant at the self-checkout who's working their very hardest, but
Yeah.
there's 20 machines and they're all lighting off. Like, I feel like it's like you're a lifeguard at community pool and like everybody starts drowning. Like, you're like, who do I save first, right? Everyone's like, please, I just need to go home. I have a family I need to see. And when I was there last week, there was a man who was so frustrated with the self-checkout machine. He threw all of his groceries down, stomped his foot, looked up at the sky, and just screamed, F Galen Weston. And I think that's progress, because I think if that would have happened a few weeks ago, he probably would have said something like F Trudeau. And so I want to know, as our future prime minister, like, what would you do to make sure people scream your name at a self-checkout?
Well, I hope that it would be yay, Karina Gould, because we've brought down the GST and we've made groceries more affordable. So on Thursday, I made one of my big first policy announcements where for the next year, if I become prime minister, I would cut the GST to 4%, recognizing that what I'm hearing from Canadians across the country is that life is unaffordable right now. And so this is a really tangible way to save Canadians on average, about $700 a year.
Oh, great.
That
Thanks for
would,
breaking it down for
yeah,
us and
well,
what it
yeah,
means per
because
year.
yeah,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
would make a difference. And then the other thing that I said and I'm committed to doing is increasing the corporate tax rate for the wealthiest companies, like Loblaws,
Mm.
who earn over $500 million a year in profits.
Off of food and essentials for
Yeah,
people.
yes.
Yeah.
And that's like Loblaws. That doesn't even include like the Weston
Right.
company as
Yeah.
well that
Yeah.
earns even more than that. But that I would increase their corporate tax rate from 15 to 17%, so by 2%. Because you know what? Canadians are making hard choices and they are reducing their bills because food is so expensive. But
Right.
what we see in the grocery sector is shrinkflation. We
Mm-hmm.
see them increasing their prices. We saw a couple of years ago that they were fixing the price of bread. So they're profiting off of the backs of Canadians. And I have nothing against businesses. I think, you know, we should have absolutely a country where it's a great place to create a business and to grow a business. But if you are earning $500 million a year in profits, you can afford to pay a bit more and give back to your country because it's Canadians who are, you know, supporting you and your business to begin with. And then the other thing, which I think is really important, is as a government, we've made some really important changes to competition policy and to the Competition Bureau, but we need to do much more. We kind of have like a fake competition system in
we have
Canada.
a lot of oligopolies
We have a
here.
lot of
Yeah.
oligopolies.
Yeah.
And
I think there's like what? There's like 3 different people you can buy your groceries from.
it's not many.
Like,
It's not
yeah,
enough,
yeah.
right? And like the largest grocers own a disproportionate share. And so we don't have that real competition. And so you might think you're going to different stores, but they're owned by the same parent company, right? And so we really need to have even stronger competition laws, and we need to make sure that the Bureau has the tools and the ability to actually enforce those rules so that Canadians have the choice to, you know, choose the different products that they want, and they actually have fairer price systems. So, you know, I'm a big fan of the book, The Big Fix, and Vass Bednar, who is a professor at McMaster University, who talks a lot about this. And so that's, I think, what we need to do. We need to do better at competition so that Canadians have choices and our small and medium-sized businesses have the opportunity to be in the market, to compete in the market, and to grow.
That's great. What I'm hearing you say, both with your comments kind of on Trump and also with your proposals on tax and groceries and that kind of thing, is like Canadians really need to come together. Like we
Yeah.
can't like afford not to in this
Yeah.
moment in a lot of ways.
And exactly, but
Yeah.
this is like I see opportunity where others see challenges, and the opportunity here is for Canadians to come together and to pull together. You know, if we think about the times of like our greatest peril and the biggest challenges that we've had, Canada has always stepped up and Canadians have always stepped up, and we've been successful. They're hard times, right? But what we do is we are there for each other, and we are able to put our differences aside to make sure that we're Canada first and that we're doing what we need to do as a country.
You're putting me at ease. I feel like my blood pressure has decreased. I couldn't sleep last night thinking about these Trump tariffs, but I'm glad to know we're thinking about different possible ways. Regarding increasing the tax on large corporations like Galen Weston, like could we role play that conversation? Like I'll pretend I'm Galen Weston.
Sure, he probably won't be a fan of it, but
Okay, yeah. So you pitch it to me.
Yeah. Okay, Galen,
Hi.
we're going to increase your taxes.
I don't like that.
Well, you know what? I'm here to stand up for Canadians, and I appreciate the fact that Loblaws is a grocery store here, but Canadians need to be able to afford their groceries, and it's time for you to give back to Canada.
And what if I don't want to do that?
Well, the CRA will come and ask you to do it.
Oh, okay. What if I just close down all my stores?
I think that would be pretty expensive for you because you got a lot of sunk costs.
Damn it, you're right.
Yeah.
That would be so expensive. I've got a yacht vacation next week I got to pay for. God damn it. What do you mean I can't charge everybody the price of plastic on their meat? Outrageous.
Yeah. And we don't want you to be shrinking your products more and charging more for them. That's probably not something you should do either.
That's actually crazy,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Because everyone says it's not the size that matters, Karina, okay? Like,
but the price does. Yeah.
Fine, you know? What I was mentioning earlier about the F. Trudeau rhetoric, I think that's like very prominent. I think a lot of people are not happy with him. And, you know, we've seen that throughout history, even in other countries as well, right? Of like, people are sometimes not well liked, their policies are not well received. We've always had different directions on ideas of how to go forward. But I think what's happened with like the rhetoric and like the F. Trudeau flags, like there's so much hatred towards this man. And I know I made a joke earlier of this man at the self-checkout and this is Trudeau's fault and that's Trudeau's fault. And it seems like now everybody is blaming everything from like city potholes to like inconvenient wait times at the self-checkout all on Justin Trudeau. And I've heard you speak on other interviews where you're trying to educate people on what the responsibility is of different levels of government and who we should be really mad at. So I have a couple of, I have a game for us.
Okay.
I'm calling it the blame game.
All right.
And I have a couple scenarios for us. And I'm hoping you can tell us who we can be mad at or if we could actually be mad at a PM for this.
Okay. Sure.
Okay.
Sounds
So
good.
if I'm angry that my boyfriend won't propose, is that a fuck Trudeau moment?
I don't think so.
What do you
think,
mean?
Yeah, I think it would be pretty hard to blame the prime minister for that. But what I would say is that if you want your boyfriend to propose, maybe you should propose to him.
Wait, did you propose to your husband?
I did, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wait,
yeah.
how did you do that?
It wasn't very romantic. It was over the phone, and
Karina, I'm dead. That's so funny.
And I was like, "Oh, I think we should get married," and he was like, "Yeah, it's probably a good idea." And then we got married like a week later.
That was
So
that.
that was
Okay.
that.
Did he?
Yeah.
He gave you a ring at some point though.
Yeah. I actually have two rings. They're not fancy. They're like, we got married when I was 23 and he was 28.
Okay.
And
You should have married one of Galen Weston's offspring then if you wanted a fancy
no,
wedding. Yeah.
we're both like two middle class kids. It was he bought me a nice little ring, and we got married and have been married for a long time.
How long?
I'm trying to remember. We got married in 2010, so it'll be 15 years.
15 years. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're 37 now. So you met him when you were pretty young.
18, yeah. So we're gonna be together for 20 years.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Was there something about him where you were like, "That's my man"?
Yeah, he's great. He's always been someone who's been extremely supportive of me, and just kind of up for whatever adventure I want to go on.
Yeah.
And he's just a wonderful, wonderful person.
It's
Yeah.
crazy that like women are out there just being like, all we want is a man to support us, and guys are like, "Oh my god, I got a car! Like I got like a lot of money. Like what do you mean? Like and they're like doing nothing to like actually support or be useful. But they're like, "What do you mean? I have big muscles. Like please."
He's also strong. Yeah.
Oh,
So,
well,
yeah.
okay. She's living the dream life, you guys. Like he's strong and nice, like pop off queen. Okay, that's so cool. I love that. And you proposed to him.
Yeah. I mean, was it a proposal or was it kind of like a, hey, I think we should do this?
Like
Yeah, I
it was a
agree.
business interaction.
Yeah.
Like you were like, you sent a calendar invite for a Zoom link and you were like, "Hey, babe,
Yeah, there was no
marriage?
Zoom
Question
back
mark."
then.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it worked out. We're still together. So
Yeah. I love your negotiating skills already.
Yeah,
You're not
yeah.
afraid to ask for what you want, even if it would maybe even societally be deemed inappropriate.
Yeah, but I think it's 2025. So
Yes.
if you want to get married, ask.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Watch out, Trump. She will propose to you.
Oh, no, I don't think my husband would like that.
No.
or me.
Also downgrade,
Yeah.
like for sure. Okay, let's get back to the blame game. Tell
Okay.
us who in government or what level of government we could be mad at. I don't have a family doctor. Is that an F Trudeau moment? Who can I blame for
No,
that?
that is definitely a Doug Ford moment. Definitely a Doug Ford moment. So the federal government sends money to the provinces through the Canada Health Transfer, but it is the provinces that actually manage and administer the healthcare system. So if you're mad about healthcare in Ontario or anywhere in the country, that is definitely directed to your provincial government.
Okay, so that's I don't see any F Doug Ford flags out there.
Well, I mean, people choose to put their anger where they decide to, but there is an Ontario election going on right now,
Yes.
and so this is actually an important time to think about what matters to you, and if it's healthcare, if it's education, if it's the green belt, those are things that are provincial, and those are decisions from Doug Ford. So
Right.
if you want a family doctor, you should kind of ask Doug Ford
Yeah,
where your
yeah.
family doctor is.
Yeah, and don't forget, guys, to register to vote and to vote in the provincial election. We'll be doing lots of talking about that, I'm sure,
Yeah.
as well. But so it's a provincial problem, and I remember you guys during the pandemic, your government gave a substantial amount of money to the provinces.
A lot.
And there were certain provinces that chose to was it they didn't accept it or they didn't want to spend the money? Like what exactly happened?
No, I mean, I think they took the money. They just didn't necessarily spend it where they were supposed to spend it. We talk a lot about the size of the federal deficit, but part of that is because we sent a lot of money to the provinces, and the provinces now have better balance sheets because they use the federal transfers to balance their
you
budgets.
sugar daddied the provinces.
Yeah, we didn't get much back in return,
Crazy. Yeah.
and instead they just blame us for everything.
Yeah, you didn't even get like a bikini pic on the beach from them or something. Like thanks for the trip. Like
no. They just like all the things that they're responsible then blamed us for.
Mm-hmm.
Like crime is another one where, we made bail reform changes to our laws at the federal level, and yet we hear the province like blaming the federal government for these things.
Right.
Whereas, like again, Doug Ford and the provincial government haven't invested in courthouses. They haven't invested in jails. There are people, 3 to a bunk in some of our provincial
Mm.
jails. And so, judges are saying, well, we can't put them in there. So
Right.
they're getting them out on bail. So
Mm-hmm.
again, like a lot of the things in the day to day that people are frustrated with, the prime minister is the prime minister, but he's actually not responsible for everything in Canada.
Damn it. That
But
makes it a lot more complex than who
yeah,
we get
it
angry at.
does. It
Yeah.
does. And maybe it's not get angry at, but like use your opportunity to vote to make a difference, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like actually listen to what people are putting on the agenda and what their plans are and make your decision based on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, who do I blame for this? I won't have a home till I have dentures. I won't be able to own a home.
Yeah. Okay. There's definitely a mix
Okay.
there, because housing is a bit of a mix of responsibility. But you can probably go back to like the mid 1990s here, in that Canada in general, whether it was the federal government or the provinces and the municipalities, just didn't invest in
Mm.
housing, and kind of got out of the housing game.
Was that because they were too busy like getting chokers and like listening,
Yeah, in the
like watching Sabrina the
1990s.
Teenage Witch, or like what was up with that? Like,
Well, I think there was a moment where the federal government, under Chrétien Martin, were trying to get the federal books back in order, and so they, changed a lot of where federal spending was going, and got out of building housing, and the provinces didn't really step in,
mm-hmm.
and housing was pretty inexpensive for a long time, and then leading into the financial crash in 2008, we didn't have the same experience as they did in the United States, but again, like the federal government has been absent from housing for a long time. And, Pierre Poilievre likes to say that he was the minister of housing. Well, apparently there were only 6 affordable units built during that time, right? So I'm not sure that that's a really good record for him
Doesn't sound
to
like
run
it.
on.
Doesn't sound like it. If
But
Galen only operated 6 Loblaws, we'd all be pretty upset. That wouldn't be a good way of getting our
right,
groceries.
but these are
across
like
the country.
6 units of
Yeah.
housing, right, in the entire country.
Great. Oh, not even 6. Like it was 6 units.
Yeah.
Like 6 people or 6 families.
like 6 space, like homes to live in,
Oh,
right?
okay.
So
that doesn't really sound like that benefits a lot of
it
Canadians.
doesn't, no.
Yeah.
So Harper and Poilievre really stayed out of housing, and then we got back in in 2015 and made a lot of investments in refurbishing units, and we've really tried to accelerate it. But again, housing is absolutely a shared jurisdiction with the federal, provincial, and municipal governments. And you could probably blame Doug Ford too, because he got rid of rent control in Ontario. So that has been a huge issue for new builds. And then he's given a lot of money to developers, and created ministerial zoning orders, but they're not necessarily to build like housing at every kind of level along the continuum. It's really like building more $1 million homes that is not necessarily going to help people
No,
who
I'm gonna have to
are
wait till my
trying.
dentures to get
Yeah,
that.
exactly, right?
Yeah.
So again, there's a mix of people that you can blame on that one.
Yeah. If you were
But conservative politicians are always a good one to blame. So.
Oh, okay. You heard it here first. What would you plan to do for Canada if you were prime minister to help with some of the affordability around housing?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to be making an announcement in a couple days
Oh,
on this specifically.
great.
But I think it really is about making sure that we are tackling homelessness and we are getting folks on the lower end of the spectrum into housing, and then again having that real continuum of housing affordability and getting people in at the different spaces where they're able to. I think we have to go big on housing. I mean, it is so important for people to be housed, right? But then also to be able to afford it. I mean, if I talk to my brother who lives, near Trinity Bellwoods, I mean, the amount of money that he's paying for a room,
Right, not even a full
not
apartment,
not
like
an
just
apartment,
a room,
right, is out of this world.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think for not just young Canadians who are just trying to make ends meet right now, but people throughout their lives, who are trying to stay in the housing market.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest challenges is too is mortgage rates, right? Since the end of the pandemic. I mean, people they bought houses that were quite expensive, but at very low interest rates.
Mm-hmm.
And as those interest rates go up, it's really, really hard for people. Now, those interest rates are starting to come down, so that's a good thing. But there's a lot that we have to do on
Oh my
housing,
gosh.
both in
This
terms
actually
of
makes me never
yeah.
want to own a home. I'm like like I don't do math like that, like this is gonna be I need my boyfriend to propose so he can handle that because like I'm not the girl for that. I'm not the oh my gosh. Oh my
You
gosh.
are. You'll be fine. You'll get there.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. It's interesting, like we were speaking about homelessness, because I know you're from Burlington. I'm from just
Yeah.
down the road in Hamilton, actually. It's where I
Yeah.
grew up.
Okay.
And I've seen just like such a dramatic difference in the city. Of course, there's always been people who didn't have work or didn't
Yeah.
have housing in any area of the country, but in
Yeah.
Hamilton. And I think it was like around the pandemic, there was a very like stark shift of like, there'd be like some encampments here and
Yeah.
there. But now every time I go back to visit family, it seems like every single park has a tent on it. Like it's
Yeah.
weird to see a park where like somebody isn't making that their home. Like it's something
Yeah,
that's really
I
urgent.
think it's really shocking for Canadians. And so dealing with homelessness, again, this is a shared responsibility between cities, the province, and the federal government. But I think we need to really go big on this and say, like, we should not have homelessness in our country at all. And we need to get people housed. And we also have to understand what some of the underlying reasons for homelessness are
Yeah.
as well. So it's one thing to house somebody. It's another thing to make sure that they actually have the supports around them, because it's really expensive for somebody to be unhoused
Yep.
in our country.
Yeah.
And, the amount of time that they spend in hospitals, the amount of time that they spend in our social services. So let's find a way to actually address
Yeah.
kind of the root causes
Yeah.
of homelessness and to do this effectively. I mean, the other thing that we saw kind of in the pandemic and post-pandemic is like what used to be more affordable rental units that are now being kind of renovated, and people are being renovicted as well. Like I remember speaking to some housing advocates in Hamilton who were talking about like just the number of people
Right.
who were renovicted
Yeah.
from what were kind of lower cost housing options, and now they just can't stay. So we really have to, take a holistic approach to this. And
Yeah.
again, we can only do it in partnership with all three levels of government. But I think there's a really important role for us at the federal level to play. And, if I'm being fair, I think our government has actually taken really important steps in this direction. But there's still a lot more to do.
Much to do. Yeah. When you're talking about kind of like wraparound supports for people, like I presume that would include things like mental health.
Yeah.
We talk about mental health a lot on this podcast. Are there like specific strategies or policies you would want to implement for? I know health we've already established. I
Yeah.
just found out today that family doctors and medicine is provincial, but is there something that you would want to do in
Yeah,
that
I mean,
sense?
so that is provincial as well in terms of those wraparound supports. But I think there are ways for us to work with the province to say, like, here's what we're going to do from the federal level. How can we work together to make sure that those services are provided to people so that we can actually tackle and end the homelessness crisis that we have?
Yeah. Another blame. My Air Canada flight's delayed. Is that a F Doug Ford moment? An F
That's
Trudeau
actually not
moment?
Doug Ford. No,
No.
no. that is. It could be weather.
Oh.
Right? It
Okay,
could,
so God,
yeah,
like,
it could,
whoever your God
yeah,
is,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. It could be often winter in Canada is to blame for that. But my gosh, the amount of Air Canada flights that I've had that have been delayed.
I imagine you're going back and forth to Ottawa a lot.
Yeah,
I was in Ottawa earlier this week and my Porter flight coming back was delayed.
Yeah.
And like my body went into fight or flight with a 10-hour flight delay. Like I don't know how my ancestors did it, like surviving famine and war, etc. Because like I can't cope. Like how do you manage like the stress of all of that?
I'm pretty zen about it because I mean, I fly a lot. Like I back and forth from Ottawa, but also in my ministerial roles around the country. And my way to keep zen about that is I just want to get to where I'm going safely. And so I want to arrive alive. So if the reason for the delay is so that I get there safely, then, I'm very happy with that. And I can always find something to do. I've always got work to do, phone calls to make. So, yeah.
I really appreciate you. You're maximizing productivity out there.
Yeah.
And she's chill about even an Air Canada flight being delayed, guys. Okay. Find someone else.
I think it's because it happens to me so often that like I don't
You're
think,
shocked when it's not delayed. You're like, this is weird.
I'm like,
Are you
wow,
sure?
we
Is it
arrived
safe?
on time. This is great. Yeah.
Who can I blame if just generally the vibes are off in Canada?
maybe Donald Trump, I don't know, like Elon Musk, Pierre Polyev,
Okay,
like,
okay,
yeah, like,
okay.
I don't know, I get pretty icky vibes,
Just
so,
from yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Well, we're big
so
on astrology in the show, and I did find out that Pierre Polyev and Trump are both Geminis,
okay,
and so
interesting.
I think we've
Yeah.
heard what we need to hear.
Oh,
You know, like that's sufficient. You're a Cancer.
I'm a
That's a nice
Cancer.
water sign.
Yeah.
What star sign's your husband?
He's a Capricorn.
Oh, that's actually a really good match. I love
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
Is
that's
it
good.
okay? Good.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is because you're water
Yeah,
and
and
he's
he's like
earth.
earth,
Yeah,
land,
yeah. I'm
right?
earth as well. I'm a
Yeah,
Taurus.
yeah.
So if you ever wanted to date me, if it doesn't work out, then we'd be a good match. Also, maybe I don't know.
Sounds good.
Okay, another blame. What if if traffic is really bad? Who can I blame for that?
Oh, maybe a mix of like Doug Ford and the city here, but I would say this also probably goes back a really long way. Like I would probably blame the municipal and provincial politicians of the 80s and 90s on this one.
Damn it.
Yeah.
Are they still alive? Like, can I go hunt them down? Or
Some of
like,
them, some of them might be, but that was the moment where Canada had a choice to make investments in public transit, and to do that in a big way. And they pivoted and went away from subways and streetcars and went to roads. And again, I have no problem if you want to drive, that's great. But congestion in the GTA is is out of this world.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was a choice at the time, and so now, having been in government for 10 years, we've been really trying to make these big investments in transit. Whether that's subways, LRT, rapid bus lanes, whether it's urban or rural environments, trying to make that more effective for people. But it's a lot more expensive now, and it's a lot harder to do because the city's built up in a different way.
Right.
So I would squarely put the blame on the politicians in the 80s and 90s who didn't make the investments when they should
That's
have.
really frustrating. That's not a fuck Trudeau moment. Like it would
Sorry.
be nice to just be able to blame something on like everything on one person, right? Like
He's actually not as powerful as some people think.
Oh,
right? So,
okay.
yeah.
He doesn't have as much power. He has more. He has people he has to report to. He has checks and balances in the system.
Well, yeah, Canadians too,
Yeah.
right? But also
interesting. So wait, are you saying that the boss of the prime minister is Canadians?
Yeah. Yeah.
Write that down, guys.
Yeah.
Don't forget that when you
Yeah.
vote, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, Karina, you implemented our $10 a day childcare programs across the country. As a young woman myself that is like hoping to have children at one point, but is very concerned about how that could potentially impact career
Yeah.
and other things I'm very passionate about. Like that is something that I think my audience is mostly young women. Like we love that.
Yeah.
That is amazing. I also know that you are a mom yourself and you were the first cabinet member in Canadian history to ever take a maternity leave.
Yeah.
And so I need to know, like, what's your sleep schedule like? Like you're running to be the leader. You're doing all of this.
Sleep?
Like, sleep.
Sleep? Who
She's like,
sleeps?
what's that?
Yeah, I haven't slept in a long time, years. But
What do you average like a night?
probably like 6 hours.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's like
Yeah.
survivable.
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like sleep. Yeah, I have a 1-year-old daughter who is actually like a pretty good sleeper, but my 6-year-old is not as great of a sleeper. Yeah, you just go on energy, and I have a lot of energy. I'm somebody who just like naturally has a lot of energy. Like I can't drink coffee because
really,
I've got too much energy. So
wow. Were you always like that?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I've just always, been a go person. But I have to say, just like on $10 a day childcare, that is the thing I'm the most proud of in my decade in politics.
Can you say more about that? Why are you so proud of it? What is the impact that has on people?
It is so huge. So it's one of the reasons why I got into politics in the first place. Before I was even the candidate, one of the first meetings that I had in my community was with a group of young moms who were talking about how hard it was to find a childcare space and how expensive it was. And that a lot of them were having to make this decision that wasn't a choice because they couldn't afford to keep working and have a child in childcare because what they were paying in childcare was sometimes equivalent or more to what their take-home pay was a month.
So it was cheaper for them not to go to work.
Exactly.
Wow.
So they were like, their family was making the decision for them not to go to work because they couldn't afford childcare. But that's not a real choice, right? Like when you hear conservative politicians be like, oh, women want to make these choices.
Yeah.
Sure. But give them the opportunity to make a real choice. If you want to stay home, then great. If that's what you can and want to do. But if you're being forced to because you can't afford to keep working, that's not a real choice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that was one of the things that I kind of vowed that I would work on when I got to Ottawa. And, we came in as a feminist government, and I would always bring up childcare. And the prime minister would like see me coming and he'd be like,
Mm.
I know, Karina,
Oh,
childcare,
okay.
childcare, right? Because I
Yeah.
was talking about it all the time. And so
Were
when
you already a mom yourself at this point in
no, I
time?
wasn't. I
Okay.
wasn't.
Yeah.
And so it became even clearer for me
Mhm. Mhm.
after I became a mom just how important childcare was. But I knew how important it was for women in the economy and for women's autonomy and their own
Mhm.
choices,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
what they want to do with their careers. And I had gone to school in McGill in Quebec,
Mhm.
and so knew about the Quebec model
Mm.
where 25 plus years
Right.
ago they implemented at the time I think it was $7 a day childcare. And Quebec at that time went from being the province in the country that had the lowest female workforce participation to then having the highest.
Mm.
Because guess what? When women can afford to put their children in childcare, then they go to work and then they
Right.
contribute to the economy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I like to say that childcare it's a home run. Like it's good for our kids. It's good for our families. It's good for women, and it's good for our economy because
Mhm.
it's not just a social policy; it's an economic policy because we actually get more back in revenues from income taxes because people
Right.
are
We're actually
joining the
working.
workforce
Yeah.
than you spend on the program itself. And
Right.
so it is just an absolute winner for everyone.
Yeah.
And the most exciting thing for me has been seeing the results in Ontario, for example, where a year after we brought in the childcare program, 100,000 more women joined the workforce,
Wow.
right?
Okay.
And the other part of that is like just the anecdotes of
Mm.
people who talked to
Mhm.
me
Mhm.
who were saying, I was working part time or I was out of the workforce, but
Right.
now I can actually afford childcare. I'm back in the workforce, and how much better this is for my family's budget
Right.
overall,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then also thinking about, as a young woman, your career trajectory.
Of course.
If
Yeah.
you're out of the workforce for a decade because
Mhm.
you're having kids or
Mhm.
5 years,
Mhm.
that puts you so much further back in terms of your own career laddering and
Yep.
where you're going in terms of
Yeah.
leadership. And so I just think this is such a great program that is empowering women. It's great for our kids and it's really good for our economy. And the other thing that I'm really excited about seeing in a few years' time, and we'll be able to see this maybe in, the next 10, 20 years in Quebec, is the impact that this is going to have on reducing poverty amongst senior women.
Oh, say more.
Because when you are working, you're contributing to your pension, right? You're
Right.
contributing to your CPP.
Right. Yeah.
And what we see is that when women are out of the workforce, they get penalized
Of
on their
course.
pensions and
Yep.
they're saving less as well.
Yeah.
And one of the kind of groups in Canada that has had some of the higher poverty levels were single senior women.
Right. Yeah.
And so I'm really excited to see about what this is going to do,
Like
in
years in the
years in
future.
the future
Yeah. Yeah.
for women's overall economic well-being
Right.
throughout their
Right. So you're
lives.
saying if we want to live our full lives that every millennial and Gen Z girly wants to live, and that is being rich, wealthy at an old age and living in a home with all of our friends. Like this
Like
is going to
Golden
help,
Girls.
like Goldie
Yeah.
Girls. Yeah, if we
Yeah.
want to live out that dream,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
this is the kind of thing that would help us get
Yeah,
there. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
And could you just say more of like a little? Because I think there's a lot of misinformation about there of like how the childcare program actually works. So if I, as a Canadian, have a child, that's what the amount I see on my receipt when I pay for my childcare at the end of the month. But where does the money come from? Like how does
Yeah.
it actually work in the
Yeah.
system?
So we've negotiated agreements with the provinces and territories.
Did you guys hear that? Negotiated. And you already heard that all these conservative men are obsessed with her. Okay? Negotiated. Negotiated.
Yeah, they need to spend time doing other things. They need some hobbies, but whatever. So I negotiated actually the childcare agreements with the provinces and territories, and we gave them certain objectives, right? So in Ontario, for example, create 86,000 new spaces and reduce fees to $10 a day by 2026. The first thing that Ontario did was cut fees in half, and then earlier this year they reduced those fees down to $22 with the objective that within a year from now they'll be at $10 a day. And then also to make sure that they are building childcare spaces, in childcare deserts, right? Because there
Right.
are a lot of places where people don't have access to
Right.
childcare,
Yeah.
and that they're
Yeah.
doing it in both official languages, so that if you're a francophone, you have access to a francophone
Right.
spot. And then we also have, or I also put in place the Indigenous early learning and childcare as well, that's specific for Indigenous communities. So the way that it works is that you just pay less money up front, right? So when my son was born and he was in childcare in Ottawa, we were paying $1,800 a month.
That's how much, like almost how much as I pay in rent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So
Wow.
$1,800 a month. Now, people are paying on average, $600 to $800 a month, and that will go down to, about $300
Right,
a
right.
month.
And is the reason why like the process takes like a bit of time? Is it because of like building these more like spaces for
Yeah.
people
So
or?
it depends on the province and territory, right? So Manitoba and Saskatchewan, Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, they went to $10 a day pretty much right away. Ontario decided that they were going to do it in a more graduated way. So we just kind of said, here are the objectives for the first 5 years, and you can figure out how you're going to meet them. But building more spaces is really important, because if you have a space, you kind of feel like you've won the lottery, because
Right.
all of a
Yeah.
sudden you can afford it. But if you're on a wait list because we don't have enough spaces, then you're feeling really frustrated.
Right.
So
Yeah.
the whole point of the childcare program was to reduce fees, but also build the system, because we
Okay.
need to make sure that if you have a child and you want to go back to work or you need childcare, that you have access to that space as well. So there's growing pains in the system for sure, but the objective for me is that every child who needs a space in Canada will have one, and they'll have it at an affordable rate, so $10 a day, and that it'll be really high quality for them.
Slay, period,
Yeah.
guys. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And is it so? So when we're also thinking about like the system, imagine early childhood educators are a huge part
Yeah.
of that. That's also another workforce that is heavily, heavily filled by women. Like,
Yeah.
does this kind of shift to the system? Like, do these people still get paid adequately? Or, well, I mean, I don't know if
Well,
adequately's.
yeah, I mean, look, like as a mom of two, I have so much respect for ECEs. They do like yeoman's work, and it's unbelievable. I mean, I feel tired after spending, one
Yeah,
day with my
right.
two children who I adore and love. But we're asking ECEs to spend the entire day taking care of our most precious resource, our
Yeah.
children, and often 24 of them.
Yeah, right. At the same time.
And so,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it is like late laborious work, it is hard work, it is emotional work. I mean, they are doing so much good stuff. And so I negotiated increases to their pay. That is a
Really?
provincial responsibility,
Okay.
right? So
So if we're upset about that, that's another F Doug Ford moment.
But so we couldn't mandate that at the federal level,
okay.
because your workforce depends if you're federally regulated or provincially
Right,
regulated.
yeah.
And this is a provincially regulated workforce. But for example, there are provinces who said, no, we're going to pay our ECs $25 a day, and that's what we're going to do. And we're going to help them with bursaries to get educated,
Okay.
and to do all of those things. Ontario came in with, so what I had wanted was a wage grid that showed, a consistent increase.
Okay.
Ontario came in at slightly lower than that with a wage floor. And so
What does that mean?
it was like they were going to increase by $1 a year for 5 years. And
Oh, that's kind of that doesn't even keep up. I would be upset if my raise every year was just $1. What am I going to do with that?
So they kind of said, like, we're going to make sure everyone's paid $19 an hour, which is higher than minimum wage, but it's not really enough for the work that they're doing. Manitoba came in with a really good wage grid, and said that they were going to provide provincial pensions and benefits to ECs. Newfoundland did something similar, so did Nova Scotia. So there are provinces and territories that are doing really great work on the workforce piece. Ontario's getting better, I think, but there's still more work to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you give us like what is the straight tea on like being a mom of two who's also running to be leader of the Liberal Party and prime minister, who's also held a number of these high positions in government? Like, how do you actually, like, do you have someone that schedules your whole day?
Yes.
Like, how do you function? Like, when do you have time to like stress pick your skin and watch reality TV? Like, I would
Well,
die.
I
Like,
don't watch reality TV.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
have time for that.
Do you watch any TV?
Not recently, but when I was on maternity leave, I watched like all 5 seasons of Virgin River.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you were so pregnant you couldn't work, that's when you got
Well, after I
into
had the baby,
You had the
because
okay,
I worked,
okay.
I worked right up until I had both my babies.
Wow.
Yeah, and so when I had my son, we didn't have virtual parliament yet, so I after 36 weeks, you can't fly anymore. And so I was taking the train like 9 months
Oh my
pregnant back
gosh,
and forth to
Karina.
Ottawa.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I came back 2.5 months after he was born because there was no maternity leave for parliamentarians. So I worked
Really?
with,
Is that because it was mostly men
yeah,
previously?
because this is like there just weren't enough young women like having babies, and they just didn't think that was a thing that you did. And so one of the things that I did is worked with the government House Leader at the time, who was Bartis Chagger, and the Conservative House Leader, who was Candace Bergen, to bring in parental leave for members of Parliament. And so it was very funny when it happened because it passed on something called unanimous consent, where
Okay.
there's not a standing vote. It's just like, does everybody agree? And silent, and then it passes. And I was in the chamber, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!"
Wow.
And
Does that happen often that things pass
yeah,
unanimously?
it does.
Yeah.
It does. But this was a pretty major change. And I have to say that one of the coolest moments for me was after the 2021 election when we went back to the House and kind of the first time. And I saw, Layla Goodrich from the Conservatives who was there with her baby. There was a Bloc MP who was there with her baby. Laurel Collins, who was an NDP MP who was there with her baby. And I
Yeah.
just felt like, I had contributed to changing,
For
politics
for
in
even
Canada.
people whose policies you disagree
Well, no,
with
but exactly.
too.
It's like I feel really strongly about the fact that, we as leaders and trailblazers have to not just open the door, but hold it open and make it easier for the next person to come through. And, I don't really care which political stripe you have. If this is the job you want to do and you want to have a family, I want to make sure it's easy for you.
Yeah, yeah. You're family oriented.
Yeah.
And you're also a woman, as we've established already
Yes.
in this podcast. Because of all of that, you've received quite a lot of hate online. Like, do you ever read comments about yourself?
I
Like,
really try not to. Every once in a while I take a peek and I regret it. Yeah.
yeah. What's like the craziest thing you've seen about yourself?
Oh my gosh, I don't even know. I learned last night that I have a WikiFeet
That
profile.
is incredible. Have you looked at it yet?
No, and I don't think I will. It's very strange
Okay,
to
I have
me.
something really funny to tell. So the first episode we did of Overstimulated, I had open toe shoes and my toes were out. And there were people commenting about the toes. And then I went to go look myself up on WikiFeet to see, like, am I on there? And I was like a little bit upset that I wasn't. Like, I didn't want to be on WikiFeet, but I'm like, why were the toes not good enough for WikiFeet? Like, do you have a sense, like, are there other people in the government of Canada that are on WikiFeet?
I have no idea. It's honestly not a site that I've ever gone on. I just heard that I have one.
Interesting.
And I'm a little worried about it, to be honest. It's kind of weird.
Were they painted that day? Like, what shoes were they?
I think they were sandals. It was probably a summertime photo. Yeah.
There's probably Mark Carney's probably not on WikiFeet, to be honest. I don't think there's probably a lot of other people you're competing against right now that are on WikiFeet. So, you can
one thing to add to my resume.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When we're on with comedians, when we're doing tours and events and things like that, we put like as seen on and like all the your credits. You could be like as seen on WikiFeet and CBC podcast and like up on your credentials. Yeah. Okay, so you're on a WikiFeet. People are weird to you online all the time. Would you be willing to react to some of the comments I found?
I don't know. Do I want to?
I think you'll enjoy it.
Okay.
Okay. So LRD from TikTok wrote, Karina Gould is the girl who got pantsed in grade 8 and her mom sued the school. Like, did you ever think about wearing a belt so that wouldn't happen? Or like,
I can actually say that never happened.
Really? Oh.
Yeah. So I don't know. You might be thinking of somebody else. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Strange. We've got Rick from TikTok wrote, this woman never stops talking. Give it up. Do you think Rick hates all women or like just his mom? Like, what do you think?
Maybe just women who talk. I don't know.
Talk.
And it's actually my job as a politician to
you would think
talk.
it would be weird if you didn't talk.
It would be very strange if I was silent.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be doing my job appropriately.
Yeah.
Like my job is actually to speak up for Canadians.
Yeah. Are there any politicians that you wish would speak up more?
Or less?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe more of that. Okay. Paul from TikTok wrote, I think she is one of the women Trudeau hired because of her gender, not qualifications. I'm sure Paul is really busy and doesn't have 5 free minutes to look at your Wikipedia page. Like, could you just tell him briefly what your credentials are?
Yeah, sure. I went to McGill University for my BA in political science and Latin American studies. I then went to Oxford, where I got a master's in international relations. I worked for the Organization of American States in Washington, D.C. I worked for the government of Mexico here in Toronto. And then I've been a member of parliament for almost a decade decade and have held 4 cabinet positions. And as you mentioned, I'm the youngest woman in Canadian history to have been appointed to cabinet and have held very senior roles in the government. So
Damn.
I invite him to look at my Wikipedia and yeah, maybe we can have another conversation after that.
Yeah. You know, Paul, I don't even know if you made it through community college, my guy. Like there were some grammatical errors in that sentence. Like I don't think you made it to Oxford. Conservative Daddy from Instagram.
Conservative Daddy.
That's the real username. I did not make that up. Conservative Daddy. We support daddies of all kinds. We do. But Conservative Daddy from Instagram, he decided to diversify the language a little bit, and he went just with a GIF, and it just says, "Shut up, bitch." That's all it says. And so I'm wondering, like, if you were prime minister, would you outlaw sexist GIFs?
No, because that probably goes against the Constitution.
Damn it, that whole thing.
Yeah, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. You know, as paraphrasing Voltaire, as much as I don't like what you have to say, I'll defend your right to say it. But yeah, he could probably be more constructive.
Yeah. There's there was a lot of comments from Jack on your Facebook.
Okay.
He came to write on, this was on one day.
Yeah.
He came to write, "Whatever turns you on, princess." Then he came back a day later to write, "You need a hearing aid," which is honestly like fan behavior. The fact that he like came back to revisit it. And then afterwards he called you a fruitcake. Do you have a favorite sweet treat?
Well, I'm glad that he follows me so much. Clearly,
engagement is engagement.
Engagement is engagement. But I'm gluten free, so I really like gluten-free chocolate lava cakes. Those are pretty good.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you be?
I also like meringues. Meringues are really good.
Ooh, that's very light.
Yes.
That's like yes.
Yeah.
Can you be the prime minister if you're gluten free?
Yeah, I think that is, I think that's okay.
Has it ever been done before though?
Good question. I don't know. That could be another first. You're going
to be doing a lot of firsts, Karina. I don't know. What about low iron? Do you have low iron? Can a prime
No,
minister have low iron?
I have very good iron.
Okay, you must have the energy.
Yeah.
Wait, what do you eat to get so much iron?
I don't know. I've always had good iron levels.
Damn it, you're actually perfect. Like I've never met a woman that can speak confidently and has appropriate iron
and
levels.
Even when I was pregnant, like it was because you have to get your iron levels tested all the time.
Yeah.
And my midwife was like, "Your iron levels are like out of this world."
Okay, if I ever have to get a blood transfusion, I hope we have the same blood type, honestly. That sounds really nice. That sounds really great. I have some more questions about your daily life in Parliament and in politics for you. You know, you're in close quarters with people all the time. You're working all hours of the day. I imagine you get very close with people. And I know you have cabinet secrecy, but like, has anyone ever farted during a cabinet meeting? Like, has anyone ever ripped ass so bad it like disrupted business? No?
No comment.
Not even one? Not even just like a little, not even like when you're sitting beside somebody on an airplane and it's like disgusting and you're like, I'm not going to say anything, but I'm just going to pull my scarf up. Like nothing even like that.
No.
What about caucus? Like anyone farting at caucus? Like
No.
In the house, nobody's stinking up the place.
There's a lot of hot air in the house.
There's a lot of hot air. Okay. I imagine there's some large hot air emitters in there.
There's some large hot air
emitters. Speaking of hot air emitters,
Yeah.
One thing that I'm really passionate about and curious about is climate change.
Yeah.
I know the carbon tax was not, let's say, very popular with a lot of people. Like, is that something you're planning on keeping? Like, would you choose a different policy to make sure that we're meeting our climate objectives?
Well, I think the one thing that I know about Canadians is that they really do care about the environment and they really do care about fighting climate change. I think we have to have a really honest conversation about the carbon tax and what it does and what it doesn't do. Just because Pierre Poilievre says something doesn't mean it's true, and actually it's often not. And
well, yeah, I remember even seeing the ads they have about the carbon tax. The way they started is actually just false. They're saying the farmer needs to pay, and from my understanding, I mean, if you search carbon tax, the first page that comes up, the Government of Canada website, it says agriculturalists are exempt from that with like a few exceptions. So it's actually just not accurate in a lot of ways.
Like why would he, tell the truth, right? So it's easier to rile people up.
Like we said, a Gemini, guys, a Gemini, you know what that means. You get it. Okay.
But I know some good Geminis too, though.
Really?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay, you'll have to introduce us because that would change my world. That would change my world. But carbon tax.
Yeah.
Carbon tax,
so back to that. It's responsible for 10% of our emissions reductions, right? So I think we have to recognize that it is an important piece of what we do to fight climate change. But I do hear Canadians when it comes to the fact that they're saying everything is too expensive right now, and they just can't afford to pay more for things, right?
Yeah.
So what I've committed to do, which is different than Mark Carney or Chrystia Freeland, is to say, there was a planned increase for the price on pollution as of April 1st. I'm going to freeze that, right?
Mm.
We're not going to do that. We're going to cancel that. And then we can have a conversation, I think, as Canadians about what we would replace the carbon tax with if
Mm.
that's what we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But until we figure out what that replacement is, I'm just going to keep it at the current level. We have to keep fighting climate change. And remember that if you live in Ontario or one of the other provinces where there's a backstop, Canadians get a carbon rebate.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so here in
Yeah.
Ontario, that could be $1,200 a year.
Right.
And if you
Yeah.
get rid of the carbon tax, you get rid of the rebate.
Oh,
And
so does
for
it work out like if I would that actually work out for some people that like what they would have to pay? Like they'd get more back than what they
yeah,
actually
so
have
the
to pay?
majority of Canadians get
Mm.
much more back than what they pay in.
Sorry, say that again. The
Yeah.
majority of Canadians
Yes.
get much more back in terms of financial
Yeah.
dollars from the carbon tax
Yes,
than what they have to pay for it.
that's right.
So then who's paying? Who are the ones that are actually paying?
The wealthier ones,
Oh, okay.
right? Because they spend more on
Mm.
carbon, right? And so
Oh.
because they're spending more on carbon, they're paying more. And so for lower income Canadians, I think the PBO, the Parliamentary Budget Officer, said that 8 out of 10 Canadians get more back than what they pay.
That's 80%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty high number. So if you're going to say, well, we're going to get rid of this, you have to have a plan for, well, are you also getting rid of the rebate checks? And,
Mhm.
I'm committed to also increasing the industrial price on pollution because I think big emitters have to pay. But like if you were to increase it to the equivalent of what the consumer price is,
Mhm.
like that would be a huge increase on
Right.
industry.
Yeah.
And it would be really hard to keep the checks because that would billions of dollars
Yeah.
a year.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's a very responsible plan either because I don't think our industry can actually afford to make up that difference.
Right.
But then I also think it's really important to help Canadians make the choices that they want to make. And like individual Canadians are already making better choices
Right.
than industry is,
Mhm.
but they want to be able to buy electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles. We have a rebate at the federal level. It's not as generous as I think it should be because if you are a middle income Canadian, it's probably not enough to help you make the choice to buy an electric or a hybrid vehicle. I would include gas hybrids in that as well because anything we're doing to reduce our
Right.
emissions
Yeah.
is a good
Yeah.
thing. And then also to bring things back like the home energy retrofit program.
So when I finally own a home after I get my dentures,
Yeah,
I can
yeah,
make it a
yeah.
green home.
Yeah, or your landlord, right,
Oh,
can do
even
that
renters
too.
can use that too.
Well, not renters, but we should be incentivizing landlords to make greener
Right.
choices as
Yeah,
well. We should
yeah.
be updating the Canada Building Code to all of our new buildings to be greener homes.
Yeah,
Like there's
yeah.
this incredible building in Burlington that is one of the most energy efficient multi-unit buildings in Canada, or it is
Cool.
the most energy efficient in Canada. And we did that by supporting them and the work that they were doing at the federal level. And we need to be having carrots to encourage people to make the choices that they want to make, but that are too unaffordable for them right now.
Right.
And that's not just good for the individual consumer. It's also good for our industry. Like Ontario is an auto manufacturing powerhouse, and they are making the change to electric and hybrid vehicles. We made big investments in batteries. And so let's support Canadians,
Yeah.
support our industry as
I
well.
like that you said support Canadians because when you were
Yeah.
talking about EVs, I was concerned we were going to be supporting people to buy Cybertrucks, and I don't know if that's the move.
Oh, those are weird. Honestly, I see
They look
them.
like a robot's
Yeah,
tampon. They look like disgusting.
they are not an attractive vehicle.
No,
Yeah.
and I don't want to support Elon any more than we must.
Well,
honestly.
but here's the thing, right? Like, the Ford manufacturing plant, Honda, Toyota, those are all vehicles that are built in Canada that are making the move to become electric and hybrid. And so let's support Canadians, support local.
Yeah, so cool, especially with what's happening south of the border right now. Very important. Karina, I've got some rapid fire questions for you from our listeners. Okay, what is your skincare routine?
I don't have one.
You don't have one? You're
I've got 2 kids. I've got 2 kids and I have a
She's like,
politician.
my skincare routine's Play-Doh. Just like, baby spit is my moisturizer.
I'll take advice because I don't have one.
I'm not so knowledgeable of this, but apparently you got a double cleanse.
Yeah.
So one cleanser to wash off your makeup.
Okay.
another
Well, I mean, I
cleanser
do
to cleanse
remove
your-
my makeup.
Oh, okay, so you do have a skincare routine.
Yeah, obviously I remove my
Okay,
makeup. I
okay.
wash my face, but I'm not like
You're not putting on a bunch of creams and
I'll
things
I'll
like
put
that.
skin cream on, but that's about it.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's good. Do you have like, I guess I don't know if you can mention a brand of skincare you
I don't
use.
even know what it is.
It's like, whatever's been in my cabinet for the last couple years, that's what it is. One listener wants to know: does Trudeau look even more like Fidel Castro in real life?
Well, I've never met Fidel Castro, so, but also no.
Do you dream in English or French?
Depends on the language that I've been speaking. Sometimes I dream in Spanish.
Oh, you speak Spanish as
I
well.
do, yeah.
Your husband's from Mexico,
My
isn't
husband's
he?
from Mexico.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
What do you think of what's happening with like Trump and all of the raids and like the just lack of humanity there?
yeah, I mean it's really really awful to watch. And I think that we have to treat people as humans. That's
Yeah,
the most important thing. Like,
yeah.
my grandparents were Holocaust survivors,
Mm,
and the thing that always stuck with me
mm,
is like you always have to look at another person as a human being
yeah,
first, and that's where my heart is always
yeah,
is. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Does he still have family in Mexico?
yeah. His whole family's there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Do you get to go back and visit?
yeah. On occasion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
What's your
So,
favorite part about being in Mexico?
the food.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the food is amazing.
What
Yeah.
are you going for? What are you reaching for?
Oh, well, tacos like
Yeah.
all the time, but I love flautas.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
Does your
So
husband know how to make them?
yeah, he does. Yeah.
Wait, can I come over for dinner soon?
Sure.
Like, I'm sure you have so much free time to host me for dinner. I'm
Yeah.
sure it'll be great.
And I love pozole like that. Oh, it's really good.
That
So
sounds delicious.
yeah.
One listener wants to know who's your best friend.
Oh, I have a group of best friends, girls that I've been friends with since pretty much grade one.
Wow.
And yeah, they're my best friends. Like,
Is that the
yeah.
group of friends you went to see a Shania Twain concert
It
with?
is.
I saw this on
Yes.
your
Oh, did you?
Instagram.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw you're a Shania Twain
Yeah,
fan.
yeah. We went to go see Shania Twain and Beyonce.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you win prime minister, can you make your walkout song like "Man, I Feel Like a Woman," or do I need to start my own petition for that? Like, how can we make that happen?
I mean, I love Shania, so I'm open to that. But I also love like a whole bunch of other female Canadian artists. I walked out to Confident for my launch
Oh,
video,
cool. Okay.
and then walked out and then left to This Girl Is on Fire. So
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really fun.
Yeah.
That's really fun. Is like if you become prime minister, like do you have power to like get people in for private concerts or like
No.
do people respond to that? That's not how it works.
That's not how it works.
Oh, okay. Do we? It is interesting. I was like thinking about when I was watching the inauguration coverage in the
Yeah.
States. Like we really don't do like
No,
you know.
it's very.
I can come sing at yours if you want. It won't be good, but
what
I
was
could
the
do
word
it.
of the summer in Canada? Like the word of the summer that.
Oh, like Brat Summer.
No, but the other one, like demure. Like we're very demure.
Very cutesy, very demure.
We're very
Yeah,
demure
yeah,
in Canada.
Yeah. Yeah, we are. We actually we're bringing demure back, you guys. We're actually the epitome of demure. I know. I love when I see like the clips on like TikTok or whatever. Will be like politics in America, and it's like really brutal, and it's like somebody in like Parliament in Canada being like, "You're a stinky butt," or just like something that's like, "Oh, burn!" Like it's not even that bad, right?
Actually, one of my favorite ones
Yeah.
is that I can't remember what one of the Conservative MPs said, but my friend who sits behind me and colleague Mark Garrettson said to him, "Sick burn, dude."
Sick burn, dude.
And I was like, "You're aging yourself."
Does that happen a lot where people are like, yeah, like whispering like to each other of like,
Well, he said it sarcastically,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
it was, yeah. So
Yeah.
it was a bit of a heckle back and forth. But
oh,
yeah.
you have hecklers in the house.
Yeah.
I actually would thrive there. I think like I'm very used to hecklers as a comedian.
Yeah, well, and so you don't actually get the full feeling when you watch like question period,
Yeah.
right? Because like the mics are really good at just picking up the person who's speaking.
Mm.
But for people who actually go into the house, they're like, "This is so loud," right?
Oh.
And one of the things that I'm really good at is just kind of like ignoring the
Yeah,
hecklers.
again, you have three younger
And-
brothers.
Yeah,
you,
like
you
I'm
had
just
hecklers your whole life.
yeah, that's right. And so I'm just really good at like going forward, and it gets under the Conservative skin because they try so hard at kind of like your bots or your people
Right.
on TikTok
Yeah,
who
yeah.
are like commenting, and
Yep.
you just ignore them, right? Like
Yeah.
ignore the haters. So,
Yeah, ignore the haters. Speaking of career, one of our listeners wants to know, how do you handle like public speaking and leading and like all these high pressure situations? Like how do you navigate that? Like do you have imposter syndrome? How do you show up and really be confident in yourself?
Well, I mean, I think everybody has imposter syndrome to a certain extent, but the only way that you get better is by doing things that are hard and challenging yourself. And so, I have always tried to put myself in situations where I'm a little scared, right? And then you get better and you improve, and you just kind of keep going from there. And one of the things that I've loved about my career in politics is that I feel like I've been given a little bit more responsibility in each new role, and each time you get that role, you go, okay, is this something I can handle? And then you just put your best foot forward and do your best. And I've been able to handle each one of those and grown and learned so much from it. So so don't let imposter syndrome stop you, because turns out most people don't know what they're doing, but the only way that they learn is by doing
It's
it.
actually doing it, getting into the fire. I love that. Do you have any tattoos?
No.
You don't have any tattoos?
No.
Okay. since you guys legalized weed, like, what do you think about mushrooms? Like,
Baby steps.
baby steps.
Baby
Okay.
steps.
Okay.
But I think, like legalizing cannabis has gone pretty well in Canada. And for people who were really worried about it, they're good. And the thing that I love is when I get like people who call me who are like, I've just tried it for the first time. They were really worried about it,
Yeah.
which is fine. I think as long as you're doing it responsibly, that's fine.
Yeah. Do you ever smoke weed? Do you ever take an edible?
No.
That's not your thing?
No, it's not my thing.
Do you do any? Do you drink? You said you don't drink coffee. Do you drink alcohol?
On occasion, but I'm breastfeeding, so I don't now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah.
energy is just purely
It-
from
I-
within.
yeah.
Do you like, what's your care routine? Like, do you do manifestations? Do you do like yoga? You just like do it?
I mean, if I have time, I would love to do yoga. If I have time, I would love to get on the exercise bike.
Mhm.
I'm a bit better in Ottawa because it's
Less distractions.
yeah, or more distraction. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
But when I'm at home, I have my kids,
Right.
right? So, I mean, they're up at 5 or 6 in the morning. So,
mhm.
I'm busy with them. Yeah, what's my care routine? I don't know. Just go. Like,
Just go. She's just raw dogging life, you guys. That's incredible. I love it. I love it. What's something people often assume about you that is totally wrong?
that I'm a lawyer.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
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 A lot of politicians are. So
Yeah,
I can
most
see, yeah.
people assume I'm a lawyer, but I didn't go. I never went to law school.
Did
So.
you ever think about it? Were you like,
Yeah, I did, but I never went.
yeah, I don't. It looks really boring. I like when I was in high school, I got real nerdy and practiced. I did like on my spare period would do practice LSAT tests just because I liked the mind games.
Yeah.
And then I thought of like, oh, like look at the books are real thick. Like the books are stacked and it doesn't look fun, and you have to wear uncomfortable outfits all day.
Well, I'm a politician, so
Yeah, so you have to do that, and you have to read a
that
lot too.
I do, and I have to deal with the laws. So one of my colleagues
That's
always
so
says I'm
annoying.
the best non-lawyer he's ever met.
Oh, cool. Okay, okay, best non-lawyer.
Yeah.
Karina, going forward, I would love to know about what you think about the future of the Liberal Party.
Yeah.
But first, I want to ask you, now that Justin Trudeau is divorced and he's soon to have a career change, like what dating app do you think he's going to get on?
I don't know. I don't even know what dating apps. Like, I don't even know about dating apps because I've been married.
You were like, I've been in love since I was 18. Yeah.
So
You don't think he's like?
I'll ask my brothers, my single
Maybe
brothers.
he's
But
like
yeah,
he's like a Bumble guy. Maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe
Yeah.
maybe Hinge. Maybe
Yeah.
like.
I'll ask my brothers
Maybe,
for their advice. Yeah.
I don't know. He could always try like Facebook Marketplace. Like worst comes to worst, like you can connect with people everywhere. Really, like he's very well known. Like I do wonder, like maybe those F Trudeau flags will take a different meaning. Now that he's available like that, right? Okay. Green, I do want to ask you though seriously, like what do you think about the future of the Liberal Party in 2025? Like what do you really want to be doing that's either different or innovative, and what message do you really want people to know about the Liberal Party now?
Well, I think the most important thing for us as a Liberal Party is to be humble and to acknowledge the fact that we have lost trust amongst Canadians, and to recognize that we need to listen to Canadians and we need to listen to our members. So I've been a member of the Liberal Party since I was 14. So you're talking about being like
Even longer than you've been married.
Yes.
This girl commits.
That's right.
This cancer commits, you guys. Okay.
I do. That is, I'm a loyal person. But like you were talking about as, a high schooler doing LSAT practice tests.
Yeah.
I was volunteering on political campaigns and going to party conventions and, thinking about how to make Canada like a great country and how to, protect what we have and improve on it. But one of the things that I loved about being a young Liberal and being a member of the party was having policy debates and putting forward ideas and thinking about our country and how we're going to improve it. And we've kind of gotten away from that a little bit. We've been in government for going on a decade. And, it happens sometimes when you're in government, you get further away from the grassroots. And I think that the way that we are going to revive our party and to re-energize it and make it a real option for Canadians in the next election is by engaging our grassroots and by engaging our communities and listening to them and having open, honest dialogues about what we want to be as a party and what we want to be as a country. And that's what excites me about politics. It's what excites me about democracy, is the ability to have those conversations and to debate big ideas.
Yeah.
Right. Like, again, I'm an optimist. I see lots of opportunity here. I think, this leadership race is an incredible opportunity for us as Liberals to have big debates and to talk about where we see our country going in the future. We had some really good ideas in 2015, but it's 2025 now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we have to adjust and we have to pivot. And one of the things that has gotten me interested in running in this leadership race is that I really think it's time for the next generation of of leadership. I
agree.
don't think that the policies of the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s are the policies that are right for today. Like, I don't know about you, but I've never had a job where I qualified for EI. Right? Like when I graduated from university in 2010, it was an economic crisis.
Yeah.
Like my generation as millennials, like it wasn't easy to get into the workforce. It wasn't easy to get into the housing market. Like there are a lot of things that are different about our generation and the generations behind us than it was for our parents and our grandparents.
Yeah.
And so
Thanks, boomers, for absolutely sewering that for us.
well, no, I mean, like, I don't think we need intergenerational warfare, but what I do think is that we have to have a leader and a government who understands our time. And, you know, one of the things I'll say about Pierre Poilievre is that I think he understands how to communicate with people right now. And I think he's really capitalized on that. But he himself has said that his ideas haven't changed since he was 14 years old. And so
I don't want a 14-year-old boy running our country. I don't even want to have dinner with a 14-year-old boy, actually. That sounds horrible.
There's some lovely 14-year-old boys out there. But what I would say is that I don't know how you can't change your ideas and your opinions.
Right.
You know, if you're talking about what was the right thing to do or what we thought was the right thing to do 30 years ago versus where we are today. And actually, we know that those policies from 30 years ago, they don't work in 2025 anymore.
Right.
And so, you know, that is something that for me is like, we need a leader for our time, for our generation, and that is going to understand where Canadians are at right now and what their lived realities are and how we can help them today, but also tomorrow.
That's great. Karina, thank you so much for joining us today. And to what you were saying earlier about grassroots, I'm so grateful that you came all the way into Toronto to be live in our studio with us today. That really means a lot to me and all of our listeners. Is there anything else you'd like to leave people with or something to reflect on or something to think about?
Yeah, like there is an opportunity right now. Get engaged, join the party. You know, one of the things that I always think Canadians get surprised about is how easy it is to get involved in politics, how easy it is to connect with your politicians. So don't be shy about it. Reach out, share your ideas. You know, this is our moment. It's our democracy. It's our country. And so your ideas are meaningful and they're great. Contribute to it. If you're a member of the Liberal Party of Canada, make sure you vote on March 9th. If you like the things that I've been saying, if you want to get involved, go to my website, karinagould.ca. You can commit to vote. You can volunteer. You can make a donation. I'm different from the other candidates. My network is not people who have $1,700 lying around. 85% of my donations are $250 or less. And so you can really make a difference. And I think that, you know, it's easier to be negative. It's easier to be angry. Pierre Poilievre is, you know, understanding Canadians' frustration and anger right now, but instead of offering them solutions and paths forward, he's just taking a mirror and holding it back to them. We need politicians who are delivering solutions and not slogans, and who are taking that anger, taking that frustration and making something constructive out of it. And that's what I'm offering Canadians.
That's great. Yeah. Well, I hope we got lots of Canadian engagement on this episode. If you're from Canada and you made it this far, comment a maple leaf or the flag or what you found most interesting about this below. We'd love to be able to see that. Karina Gould, she's running for Liberal leader and our next Prime Minister. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks for getting overstimulated with us, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.